NHL regular season recap, night 181. The bias is coming all the way out tonight. It is a good night to be a Caps fan. We're kicking it off, though, with the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets, and not a great effort from Carolina. They lose to Columbus 6-3. It does not matter. They are locked into that Metro 2 spot. Del Belbelouz scoring his first NHL goal for the Blue Jackets. Werenski makes it 2-0. Kotkaniemi and Teravainen both scoring to make it 2-2, but Malatesta, Malatesta, Jesus Christ, scores to make it a 3-2 game before the end of the first. Teravainen and Gaudreau both scoring in the second. I didn't realize Johnny Gaudreau only had 12 goals on the year. That is tough. Nonetheless, though, it's 4-3 Blue Jackets after 2, and then in the third, Alex Nylander and another from Zach Werenski make it a 6-3 final here. Spencer Martin getting the start for Carolina. I think a smart move by them, resting both Kochetkov and Freddie Anderson. He did not have a great night, though, 19 of 25 for a .760 save percentage. Meanwhile, Jet Greaves, in likely his last game of the year, unless this was game 82 for Columbus, I don't even know. He goes 38 for 41. He was phenomenal, gets them the W. It's a 6-3 win for the Blue Jackets. If that is the end of their season, that's a great way to end it off. About as good of a win as you could get to cap things off, but nonetheless, 6-3 here is the final in Columbus. The Senators visiting Boston, and while this game doesn't seem all that important on paper, there was actually a bit of playoff implications involving this game and the Leafs and Panthers game, because the Bruins lost this game and the Panthers beat Toronto, which means those two flipped. The Panthers now win the Atlantic, and Boston bumps down to Atlantic spot number 2, meaning they get Toronto in round 1. Congratulations, Leafs fans. No goals in the first in this one. What are these names, man? Smekol? We're sticking with it. Smekol and Chychrun both scoring. It is 2-0 Sens after 2. Pavel Zacha would score with about 7 to go in the third on the power play to make it a 1-goal game, but the Bruins unable to score. Whether or not they care all that much, we'll see in about a week and a half. Artem Zub on the empty net, shorthanded, makes it 3-1. It's a nice little win for Ottawa to end their season. Anton Forsberg, 34 of 35, and .971. Linus Ullmark, 17 of 19. He didn't face a lot of shots, but I felt like had a decent game. I don't know. It wasn't that deep, man. Nonetheless, the Bruins now losing this one will face off against Toronto in round 1 and will bounce to Toronto right now. They, of course, taking on the Florida Panthers, and they, like Boston, are not able to get it done in Florida. It's a 5-2 final. They actually looked really good in the first. Tavares and Gregor both scoring. Excuse me. And they outshot Florida 14-6 in the first period. And then Florida woke up in the second period and said, actually, we would like to win the division, and they outshoot Toronto 29-4. Yeah, 29-4 in the second period. Verhaeghe, Bennett, Reinhart, and Montour all scoring in that middle frame to make it 4-2. The shots die down a lot in the third. It's 8-7 in favor of Toronto, but Sam Reinhart gets the only goal of the frame on the empty net, his 57th of the year, and it is a 5-2 win for the Cats. Joseph Woll, I thought, was pretty good in this one, was very busy, especially in that second period. 37 of 41 for a .902. He's still unlikely to start game 1 of the playoffs. Anthony Stolarz, 24 of 26, a .923. Barring an injury, this is likely the end of his season, which I thought was a pretty good one by all things considered here. So good to see that for Stoli, and the Cats, of course, wrapping up that number 1 spot in the Atlantic with a 5-2 victory over the Leafs. All right, for the first time in regular season recap history, we're covering 2 games at once because no other way to do it for this Red Wings, Canadiens, and Caps Flyers matchup. I was watching this one on both monitors the entire way through. In the first period for each game, it's Newhook and Seider trading goals to make it 1-1 after 1 in that one. And Ovechkin, the only goal of the first period in their game, scoring off his ass off a Dylan McIlrath shot to make it 1-0 Caps. He eclipses the 30-goal mark once again. And then in the second, in the Habs game, it doesn't look good for Detroit. They go down 3-1 relatively early. Brendan Gallagher and Cole Caulfield both scoring in the first half of the period, but Joey Veleno once again makes it a 1-goal game just 45 seconds after Cole Caulfield's goal. Meanwhile, back in Philadelphia, a little over halfway through the second period, Eric Johnson scores just his 5th of the year to tie that game up at 1, and suddenly it looks like the Flyers might be doing the Red Wings some favors in this one. In the third, though, things get really spicy. Daniel Sprong scoring to tie it just 3.5 minutes in, and Uri Slavkovsky about halfway and some change through the third frame once again makes it a 4-3 lead for the Canadiens, and they are in full-on panic mode in Detroit. We get all the way down to like the last minute. It's still 4-3 Montreal. The Flyers game lagging a bit behind this Detroit game. The Caps probably had 4 or so minutes left when the Red Wings were at about the minute mark. So The Red Wings pulling their goalie, trying to tie this up, forcing overtime. They need the 2 points more than anything. And, of course, Philadelphia needs a win in regulation. We head down to the final seconds in the Detroit game, and David Perron scores with a little over 4 seconds to go to tie it to force overtime. And at damn near the exact same time as David Perron scores on the world clock, John Tortorella decides to pull Sam Ersson, and TJ Oshie scores on the empty net, basically ending the Red Wings season if the Flyers are not able to tie it, force OT, and win that game. Of course, the Red Wings game would go all the way into a shootout. Patrick Kane, the only goal scorer in that one. It's a 5-4 win for them, but unfortunately, the timing worked out just brutally for the Red Wings. The Flyers are not able to tie it. The Caps win in regulation and clinch a playoff spot. It's a 2-1 win for them and a 5-4 victory for the Red Wings, who end their season on a good note, but man, that feels bad if you're a Detroit fan. They did everything they could in their final 3 games to try to get it done, but just not quite able to do so, and it kind of comes at the hand of just some really poorly timed goals by both them and, of course, the Washington Capitals. So 5-4 Red Wings in this one, just barely missing out on the playoffs. And the Capitals, of course, with the empty netter from TJ Oshie, clinch the 15th playoff in 17th years for the organization, 2-1 over Philadelphia. The Winnipeg Jets hosting the Seattle Kraken, a game that doesn't mean a ton, but the Jets do have the opportunity to lock up home ice, at least in the first round against the Avalanche, and it looked pretty back and forth for a lot of the game tonight. Kyle Connor, Tomas Tatar, and a second from Kyle Connor in the first period to make it 2-1 Winnipeg after one. That second Kyle Connor goal coming with just 6 seconds left in the frame. That's a big one. Hang on to that. In the second, Nick Ehlers makes it a 3-1 game just 2.5 minutes in, but Seattle was not easy to kill in this one. Yanni Gourde, about 2.5 minutes later, makes it a 1-goal game once again, and then we get to the end of the frame. It's Ty Karche, who was great in the playoffs for Seattle last year, gets his 10th of the year in this one, making it 3-3 headed to the third, and we get well over halfway through the third period, or well over halfway through the third period, excuse me. I just said that. Whatever, I'm tired. Tyler Toffoli, his 33rd of the year on the power play, makes it 4-3 in favor of Winnipeg. And you got Connor Hellebuck as your goalie, man. He's going to win the Vezina. He locks it down the remainder of the game. That's a 4-3 regulation win for the Jets. They lock up home ice in the first round. Again, they will not have that depending on who they play in round 2 if they get that far. But a big W for them tonight, leaving no opportunity for Colorado to catch them in their final game against Edmonton. Hellebuck, again, did what he needed to in this one. Not his best game statistically, but 20 of 23 for an .870. Grubauer, very similar stat line, 20 of 24 for an .833. Not a ton of shots in this game, to no one's surprise, but Winnipeg does get it done 4-3 at home over Seattle. The Golden Knights taking on the Chicago Blackhawks, a game that means nothing for Chicago, but quite a bit for Vegas because they get to choose their destiny here between playing the Dallas Stars or Edmonton Oilers. Congratulations for that great season you had. No goals in the first, Braden McNabb in the second, and then Amadio Dickinson and Nick Roy in the third. Roy He's raw, right? I don't know. He scores. Empty netter. It's a 3-1 final. Logan Thompson, very good once again. 23 of 24. I expect him to be the starter in Game 1 for Vegas. Peter Mrazek, once again, the busier of the goalies. 34 of 36, a .944 save percentage. He had a very solid game, just as usual, no goal support from the Blackhawks. We'll see what happens here with Vegas. They have played 81 games. The Kings have played 81 games. They are 1 point up, and they do not hold the regulation win tiebreaker. So we will see what happens there. Their final game against Anaheim, and I believe the Kings' final game is against, let's go take a quick peek here, on Thursday against Chicago again. So we'll see what happens there. 2 pretty bad teams playing against 2 teams playing for seeding. But for tonight, though, Vegas leapfrogs LA at least for one night. So, 3-1 Vegas. Final game of the night here, the Canucks hosting the Calgary Flames, and the return of Thatcher Demko, and let me tell you, that boy looks playoff ready. They take care of the Flames. The final score is 4-1, and it's a 39 save performance for Thatcher Demko. Myers and Hoglander both scoring in the first. Joshua in the second. Pachal scores, whatever, scoring halfway through the third to make it a 2-goal game, but JT Miller's 37th of the year makes it a 3-goal game once again, and that is it for this one. Again, a 4-1 final. Jacob Markstrom on the other end of the rink goes 27 for 31. I didn't think he had a bad night, but not good enough to get the job done. The Flames here, season's not quite over yet. They have one more game, I believe, on Thursday as well, so we'll see how that goes for them. For the Canucks, of course, they have locked up the Pacific Division at this point. We'll see whether or not they decide to rest some guys on Thursday. Of course, that game not really meaning too much for them at this point, but of course, like to keep the momentum going for that one. I would probably expect to see Casey DeSmith. I don't know they're going to risk Thatcher Demko playing another game prior to the playoffs, but after a performance like tonight, who knows? Again, a pretty big one from him, and it's a 4-1 win for Vancouver, and that is it for a while. The NHL regular season recap, night 181, Not a ton of games tomorrow, only 4, and of course that Islanders-Penguins game that could have meant a whole lot really doesn't mean all that much now. The game to watch really is whether or not Matthews plays and if he can get to 70. So rest up. We will talk to you guys tomorrow for 4 games on a Wednesday.